Hello, this is Alisia Young, and welcome to Teach Me Freedom. This podcast is about learning how to live a freer life from authors, entrepreneurs, and experts, those who have done it and who teach others how to do it as well, and what it feels like while applying those methods to our lives along the way. Every episode will deliver resources, anecdotes, and or reviews to support you in living a more freedom-filled life. Let's jump in. Please note the video version of this episode is available on YouTube at Teach Me Freedom. The link is also mentioned in the show notes. Enjoy. Freedom Finders, this episode is part 1 of 2, where we will be talking with Dr. Donald Asher, who is the author of the book Who Gets Promoted, Who Doesn't, and Why, 12 Things You'd Better Do If You Want to Get Ahead. And I had a few motivations which led to wanting to read this book, mainly a few different job experiences, and there's one that really was a big influencer with me wanting to even have this season in this podcast because it just was such a interesting experience, and I felt that I didn't get a lot of answers about the experience. And so actually quite a few of the books that I've read for this season have been influenced by that, where I'm trying to figure out and make sense of what was going on in that particular situation or situations. But with this book, I really wanted to learn how to take ownership of my career and understand, why do certain people get promoted? Not that I want to be promoted to the very top of a company, but I just was realizing that I don't want to sit passive anymore. And I realized that I was really being a quote unquote good girl and doing well at my job, but realizing that there were certain people who were getting certain opportunities. And I was wondering, am I being noticed? Are you paying attention to me? And I just didn't want to be that kind of person to wave my hand and be like, hey, you're not giving me attention, and aren't I doing a good job? And getting to a point of feeling desperate for validation. So I just figured this would be a good opportunity to gain some empowerment and gain some knowledge and insight. And so this book was the gateway into Dr. Don Asher's world, which he has some other materials that I'm really looking forward to reading. But before jumping into the episode, where Dr. Don will give you a much clearer and thorough summary of his book, I wanted to share with you some of the changes that I've made as a result of reading Dr. Don's book. And those include being more strategic about the different content or materials that I learn about. Before, I was going based on interest and what I was thinking may be important down the line, but it really mirrors what I learned when I was working with an employment counselor, and she suggested that I sign up for a lot of Indeed alerts, and I'm not sure, I think that's in pretty global, where it's a job posting board and you sign up for different job alerts, and then you become aware of different opportunities based on the keywords that you're searching. And with that, you look at what certifications or certificates or education different roles may be looking for. And so this really mirrored that and affirmed that advice. I am also more attentive to what's going on in an organization, looking at the framework and looking at, like, thinking ahead about what are some opportunities that may come up, what are some things happening, some changes happening where maybe some people are not going to be too excited about it, where that may be an opportunity to jump up and be like, hey, I might be interested in that. Not I might be, I am interested in that. And also that includes paying attention to internal job boards, and something I never used to do was look at the different job postings. And this is like a regret that I have. When I worked for the government back before I knew how lucky I was to have that opportunity, and before leaving it to completely devote myself to school, I was getting ready to leave a position And one of my colleagues suggested, why not just kind of lower your hours, but still be, instead of leaving the company completely, just look at what postings are available so you can seek another opportunity, but still stay as part of the organization. And I didn't realize what that meant. I figured, I volunteered for so many years before getting an interview to be employed by this organization. And I didn't realize that once you're out, that it would be challenging or probably not even possible to get back in. So now that's something that I do, is pay attention to the opportunities that are already available in an organization. Another very recent thing I started doing is keeping an internal resume, a live internal resume. And this involves recording every accomplishment when working in a role, so that it's something that you can keep live, so when other opportunities come up, then you don't have to go digging. And we typically learn a lot in a specific role, especially in the beginning, but it's so easy in the day-to-day to forget, especially when learning something new. So this is a new action that I've taken on as well. Another key change that I've made before we jump into the actual episode is thinking at least 2 positions ahead, so between 2 to 5 years ahead. And so with the field that I'm going into, in order to become a certified member of that profession, you have to go to an accredited school. And for the province that I'm in, they have a membership that you need to be a part of as a student and as a certified member. And I was trying so hard after reading this book to get access to the job board to see what the different options are, but unfortunately you have to pay a hefty monthly fee, and I just couldn't justify it. But that really added the emphasis of looking at the available job boards and being connected to people in the industry, so that you are at least aware of opportunities coming up and roles that are available that you may not be aware of from the area that you are at right now. And that will allow for extending and broadening what we see, instead of limiting it to our immediate viewpoint. Anyhow, without further ado, we hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, welcome Dr. Dawn to the show. So incredibly excited to have you here, and trying my best to not fangirl right now and keep well composed. But Dr. Dawn Asher here, he's the author of Who Gets Promoted, Who Doesn't, and Why. And the version that I read is the second edition, 12 Things You'd Better Do If You Want to Get Ahead. And so, Dr. Dawn, please walk us through how you would explain or summarize your book, and why did you feel it so necessary to publish this book for us?
Alisia, thanks for having me on your show. I really like your enthusiasm. I have to say it's infectious. So I appreciate you. So I wrote the book because I had this body of knowledge, and I didn't think the knowledge was that common. So I worked in downtown San Francisco for 20 years with fast track executives, up and comers, and they were fascinating to me. And so I began to study them, and I really studied what they did, how they did it, why they did it, what they reported. And so that's what's in the book. It's exposure to people who get promoted every year to year and a half. That's how I define a fast tracker. So, and they skip assignments too. They get sometimes massive breaks where they jump over several layers. So if you're going to have a senior position at a young age, you have to do these things. So I wrote the book because I wanted people to know about these techniques. So the people who would benefit the most from the book are people that are interested in having a fast track career, but also people that are stuck somehow. So if you're stuck, the solution can be in this book, even though you don't want to adopt the whole gamut of techniques and tools that people use that have these careers, because in a sense, it's like a troubleshooting toolbox, because in there's a way to resolve something that's keeping you from getting what you want. And so that's what's in the book. It's a quick read. I call it the 2 train ride read. It doesn't take long to go through this. A couple of train rides and you've got it.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you contextualized it to just fitting it into our life. So that doesn't need to seem like a homework assignment or like some daunting task. And I love how you explain it, especially because when you mentioned that point of like something that was extremely relatable to me is that it's even if you don't want to climb all the way up or fast track like all the way, you can still take the information and the knowledge and then apply it according to what you feel you value in the direction that you're going. And so thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You bet.
Okay, so one of the topics that you talk about is an ascension plan. And I hadn't heard about this until reading your book, and it's a really phenomenal thing to think about, especially if we're trying to think ahead. So can you walk us through what an ascension plan is, and why do we even need to consider it if we're going to be serious about the direction of our careers?
So companies have succession plans. So if a key officer disappears tomorrow, they have a plan in place to fill that position both temporarily and long-term. So that's a succession plan. But careerists have ascension plans. So they have plans for what they need to do to get where they're going, and they know where they're going. So they're looking a couple positions deep, and they're saying, what is it going to take for me to get to that spot? Do I have the skills that I need? So part of it is they have a great deal of intentionality about what they're after, one position more and then two positions more. They are aware of what skills they would need to possess to thrive in those upcoming assignments. If they do not possess those skills, they have a plan to get them. Now, almost as a sidebar, we should talk about renting versus owning skills. So we should talk about that. They have a communication plan to make sure that people in the organization have the same opinion about them as they have about themselves. And then they have what I call triggers and contingencies. So a trigger might be if my boss promotes, this laggard in the office who's popular with my boss instead of me, I'm going to look for a new job. So they have these triggers and contingencies figured out in advance so that they don't have to respond to stimuli in real time because they've thought them over. And in spite of all of this, Alisia, they also are constantly listening for news, and news can change your ascension plan very quickly. So somebody who was going to go to Paris and take over the Parisian office decides they're going to leave the company. Whoa, company's in trouble. They need somebody in Paris right away. And you raise your hand. All you got to do when you hear about opportunity, raise your hand and say, I will take care of that. So the other thing that goes into ascension planning is a concept called stretch assignments. Stretch assignments are ways for you to do the job you already have, but pick up something to prove you can do more or something different. So maybe you're in accounting and you're just doing accounting, but you're thinking really to advance, I would need a stretch assignment that shows I can manage people. Maybe I'll volunteer to train and orient all the new hires. Accounting firms bring in a whole new class of accountants every single year. And maybe that's not part of your job, but by raising your hand, taking the stretch assignment, you're proving that you have or can develop the leadership and organizational skills that would come into play in the next level. So those are the things that go into ascension planning.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for clarifying that for us and helping us to be forward thinkers and really take ownership of the direction of our careers. I know that before reading your book, I was of the mindset that I just have to show up and do a good job at my work and like not get involved in certain things and just do a really good job, not really like be a nice person and interact with people, but not get, just do a good job. That's it. And reading your book, I realized that's not nearly enough, and that we have to take ownership of the direction that we're going because nobody else is responsible for us. And sometimes people have other plans that differ from our own.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think some of the worst advice that young people get is just do a great job and your boss will notice you. Nah, that's bad advice. And a few years ago, a CEO got in a lot of trouble because the women in the company were asking him, what do we need to do to break out? It feels like we're spinning our wheels here. We're experiencing glass ceilings. And he said, just do your job. And he got excoriated in the press, totally attacked. It's like, are you out of your mind? That's not enough, and you know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. And that brings another reason for expressing gratitude that you've created this book, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes when looking to leadership, you're looking for the answers, you're looking for the support and the guidance. And sometimes we can be led astray or held back, and we don't even know it. So this helps us to be able to at least know, hey, you have a vested interest in everybody's success. You don't have an agenda of any, being in a company and you want other people to move forward and at the cost of holding other people back. You want everybody to move forward, but we need to read what you say and actually put it into action.
Yeah, if you want to make companies better or society better, amass power. And so this book is about amassing power. What you do with that power, I would hope you would want to make the organization better and society better. But there's an old saying: you have to win the game to change the rules. So this book is about winning the game. Then you can change all the rules you want.
Love that. Love that. And you mentioned, just so that it doesn't get forgotten, you had mentioned renting versus owning skills. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, there's an old management science topic called the organization man, and it was an idea that an executive it's a 1960s idea that you had to fill in your weak spots so that you could perform the whole set of duties of a certain level in an organization. And the idea was that executives were interchangeable and they were like cogs in a machine. And that management science really held sway up really until recently. And so current management science on how to manage people, but also how to be a careerist, is that you can't fill in all your weaknesses. It's actually much more powerful if you figure out what your strengths are and try to find assignments or places to be where your strengths can be loosed so that they can, be unrestrained. And so that still leaves these weak spots. So in the weak spots, no, maybe you don't need to get an MBA in finance. Maybe you need to form a partnership with somebody who has that skill in the same way that many famous companies were created by duos. So they were complementary. So in management science today, you think about renting a skill that you don't have. So I'll give you an example that's from somebody I interviewed. The guy is dyslexic, and he knew it all along. And he was always seeking an extremely skilled executive assistant, who could fill in that for him and make sure that everything he sent out was perfect. And so could he fix that? Actually, no, he cannot, but he can work around it. And so those workarounds are a way of renting a skill that you don't have. Same thing with, take, for example, one of the people I interviewed is a top salesperson, tops in the whole United States, tops in his company, and he can't make a slide deck. I don't know what his problem is. I really don't know. So he hires a young person and says, I will teach you how to do corporate sales. You'll be making six figures in about 15 minutes, but you have to do all the slide decks the way I ask you to do them. And so that's an example. You don't have to figure out how to do slide decks. You just have to solve the problem. And one of the solutions is to rent the thing you don't have.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. It's really speaks to the idea of teamwork and how just that beautiful idea that we kind of need each other. Like there's no going it alone, and just work off of each other, know where you're strong, and finding who can help to strengthen you so that you can be stronger as a unit. And yeah, just
and that could be someone in the company, outside the company. It could even be, in some cases, a really supportive spouse that indulges you in your weaknesses. But there's just a lot of ways to solve that problem. Inside, outside, consulting. Solve the problem, though. Make sure you come to work with that problem already solved.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna need to mull on that a little bit more. Awesome.
We all need support. Absolutely.
I agree with you 100% there, for sure. My next question for you is, and I'm going to jump to another section because I want to really make sure I ask you this question. It's burning for me. And I know for some of the listeners who are in a similar position in an age group where we're really strongly considering parenthood, marriage, and we're kind of at that line now where we have to really get closer to making a decision, because biology impacts that. So the question is related to motherhood or parenthood. And what is so I'll say motherhood. because I'm a female. So what is your advice to women of childbearing years who are early in their career and have desires to become mothers, but also develop their careers? And some of the listeners are also in a similar position where they were in school for a very long time. So that means they were not able to work full time in the workforce. And so that means they're in an entry level job, or at the very early stages of building their career. So without adding too much extra words anymore, what would be your advice for people in that situation?
I've thought about this a lot. I did a 2-year research project on the gender-based wage gap. So I've looked at this not just recently, but for a couple of decades. And I can tell you some things that make a great deal of difference. So women do extraordinarily well. They actually out-earn men in urban settings up until the child rearing ages start to appear. And it seems as if even if a woman does not have children of her own, society changes their expectations of them when they get into their late 20s to mid 30s and early 30s. And so this is, and then the men surpass them. And when a woman has a baby, her income goes down. When a man has a baby, his income goes up. So these data are out there. You can find the data very easily. Catalyst is an organization that keeps track of these data. So what's going on here is that society is assuming that if a woman has a child, that she will interrupt her performance and productivity because of that child. So there's some very important things that has to happen here. The first one I'm going to say is women have to force men to be better partners. Okay. Don't let your men take advantage of you. Don't let them become another baby you have to take care of. So, what does that mean? It means that, you have to share the child rearing responsibilities equally, the housekeeping responsibilities equally, the food preparation, or however you make food appear in your house or outside of your house equally. And you have to beat men up for this. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because nobody gives up privilege without a fight. Nobody gives it up without the threat of punishment. And so I was extremely fortunate that my wife, when we had a baby, she was a grad student and I was an entrepreneur. So for me to miss a day's work cost a few $1,000s, and for her to miss a day of school cost nothing. Well, when the child was a baby, she went down to take care of the baby when she was sick, because that's what babies do. And then the next week, the baby was sick again, and she got dressed and headed toward the door. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to school." And I said, "Well, gosh, what do you mean?" And she said, "I watched the baby last time. It's your turn. I'm going to school. My life is just as important as your life." And it was, I wouldn't have done it without her leadership and guidance on this issue. Why would I? Why wouldn't I just go to work and enjoy my life? And so this made me a much more involved father. It made me a much better father. And it also made me understand gender roles much better. But men aren't going to do it, okay? Men aren't going to do it. They're not going to do it. So women have to step forward and beat men into submission on this issue. And I hate to speak so strongly, Alisia. I know how positive you are, but
honesty is necessary.
I'm telling you, they're not going to do it until they're forced to. And the only people in the whole universe who can force them to is their spouse. So speaking of men and women raising children. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I can tell you unequivocally is that if you keep your toe in your career while you raise children, you're not as impacted as if you take a full leave taking from the career marketplace. So what does that mean? I'm working with a woman in Australia. She has a child, and she's about to have another child. And the practice in her company is that women on maternity leave leave for a year, and they don't interact with the company at all. I said, "Don't you do that. Don't you? They're going to forget your name." And she reported to the CEO. I said, "They're going to forget your name. They're going to give away your office. And when you come back, you'll be nobody." So we arranged for her to manage 4 major projects during her year of leave. And it wasn't about being paid. It was about everybody remembering her skill set. So she put on 4 major conferences while she was on maternity leave, which she could do from home. And it kept her intellectually engaged. It was fun. She didn't find it a burden, but everybody knew who she was, and she still suited up and went down and moved stuff around. So when you are separated from the full-time, say 45, 50-hour a week professional career path, make sure you keep tabs. You can do it as a consultant, but you can also do it when you work for a corporation. So that's a very, very, very important piece of advice. And this is research backed. This is not my opinion. The research clearly shows that women who keep one toe in don't have to start their careers over. So if you don't do that, you separate, there is a method for getting as fast as possible back to your professional level. And this is in a chapter in the book. It's about, and it's also on my website. It's a super easy thing called career repair. Career repair. So what you do if you do separate from the career marketplace for a period of time, let's say, pick a number, 10 years. When you go back, you will compress your career back to where you belong into the shortest number of steps possible. So instead of working an assignment for 2 years, you try to work at it for 3 months. I could give you a career path of somebody that was actually covered as a background research. She had been an accountant. So she was out of the job market for 12 years and she wanted back in. And so she literally started as in a corner store as a clerk. Then she went to a store that sold sports memorabilia, which had a higher salary because it was it involved sales skills and knowledge of sports, which she didn't care about sports at all, but she memorized all this stuff so she could sell this stuff. And then she wrote about her accounting skills and got an assignment working for a wealthy woman that wanted someone in her home to manage her accounts. And then she got an assignment by the hour with somebody that owned a professional landlording organization's family-based business, but they had hundreds of units in San Francisco. And so she was working with them. And then she got, leveraging each time the skills that she just did in the last assignment, she got a position as an accountant with a high net worth taxation firm, a boutique firm in downtown San Francisco. So, but each one of these things, it wasn't 2 and 3 years. It was 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. It was just as fast as you could possibly compress it. And this, not everyone does this. And I know why they don't do it, because they get comfortable. They like the wealthy woman that wanted them to come over, and they enjoy having tea with her and think that's great. Let's all have tea. But there's a lot of difference between $45 an hour and what a high net worth taxation attorney makes, which is deep into 6 figures.
Wow. Okay. And how long for this? So, okay, so you mentioned that each kind of gig was like 6 to 8 months. So for her to go from the where she was in the clerk role to now the like 6-figure role, approximately how long was that whole time period?
It was only 2 years, but some of these jobs overlapped because they weren't full time. Some of them overlapped.
Okay. All right.
So I said 3 things. I said fix your man, and if you can't fix the one you've got, get a new one. Okay, fix your man. And you can set this up before you have that baby. Okay, if we're going to have a baby, we're going into this together. A second, I was saying that you have to be able to compress your career if you take a full leave. And what was the third thing I said, Alisia?
To continue to keep a pulse.
Yeah, keep one finger in there. If you keep one finger in your career marketplace, it keeps that crash from going all the way to 0. So you may just slide latitude for a while you're a mom or a dad, but it keeps you from going down to 0. That's right.
Okay. Yes. Okay. That's super encouraging. I really love hearing about that example that you shared where your client was she was committed. So even though she was raising a newborn, still worked on those projects. And I think you said she also came in and helped with like some heavy lifting, or can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but like she was still involved.
Four major projects. She put on 4 major conferences while she had a brand new baby at home.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that takes a lot of initiative and commitment. But when it's important to you, guess you'll do what it takes. And also want to make a comment about what you were sharing, like honesty. You are invited to be as honest as you can be, because one of the things that I've been learning is being nice is wonderful and all, but a conversation I was having with my cousin recently is nice doesn't always get you to where you want to go. And sometimes it's like having these truths years ago, I would have made so many different decisions. So being honest and just having that truth is more helpful than like being very, very nice and like keeping that important information away. So I appreciate you leading in that way. But I also welcome you to be completely honest as you've been.
It is my habit to be honest. Sometimes we're too honest.
Yes. I can understand. I've received feedback sometimes that, you know, when people are giving true statements, they just want to be completely honest and blunt, that sometimes if you're too sensitive, then you can't really hear what's being said. But then it's a matter of as well of the recipient and how open they are, and all that stuff. But sorry, I just went off on a bit of a tangent there.
Oh, no, that's okay. It actually goes into something that I think about a lot. Bosses can't read minds.
No, bosses cannot read minds. And so this is why it's so important for you to come back next week so you can hear Dr. Dawn Asher speak more about why it's so important to communicate your goals to your boss, along with addressing more of the topics that he's discussed in his book. Until then, honor your time, honor your energy, and see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Teach Me Freedom podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found it beneficial. Feel free to reach out to us at teachmefreedom2020@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the show on your favorite platform for streaming content. Feel free to comment and leave a 4 or 5 star review if you feel so inclined. Connect with you next time.